I'm joined by Alex Crowley, former political director to Boris Johnson, and John McTiernan, former advisor to Tony Blair. Alex, was this the big moment? Was it the big fight back for the Conservatives?
Well, a lot of people in the hall were hoping that it would be, and his strategy of presenting himself as Mr. Change after many, many years of the same is nice in theory. But the problem was his speech didn't really contain much of substance that was changing anything. The big change item we had was not building a railway line and replacing it with a couple of smaller railway lines and a few buses, which is fine.
This doesn't sound that you were very inspired.
No, well, look, you can overdo the inspirational bit, OK? I think, plenty of voters would much rather a Prime Minister that gets on and does stuff rather than kind of can make a great speech. Boris could make a fantastic speech, but no one accused him of being a particularly good manager of things, right? So you can overdo that. But I think there's a big strategic question here politically for the Conservative Party. They've obviously decided that the party can't present itself as change because, of course, they've been in 13 years and they were 14 by the time of the election. So instead, they've decided that Sunak himself is change because he's only been in a year. He wasn't even in Parliament when David Cameron was elected Prime Minister and so on. And that's fine. That makes sense from a political point of view. But therefore, you then got to go on and actually do things that are different, and you've got to actually change things. And the substance he was offering were perhaps worthy. The maths thing, very worthy. The smoking thing, whatever you think of the nanny state aspect of it, a worthy thing. Most people will agree. But I did struggle to detect what is a big change from Rishi Sunak that his rhetoric was promising.
However, John McTiernan, you see, Rishi Sunak, he's the agent of change because Keir Starmer, he told us, represents that failed establishment political status quo of the last 30 years. Rishi is for change.
Well, I thought I tweeted during the speech, I said, Rishi's given a brilliant clip to Labour Digital. He said, the country needs change. I was like, and Labour clipped it. It's been out already. And it's like don't give your opponents a great line. If the country needs change, there's an obvious way to do it. Remove these guys. That's the first thing I thought was problematic. The second thing was, it didn't feel visionary. It felt, here's a lot of things I can fix. Like making a big announcement on education, you go, and it will come into force in 2033.
Yeah.
Even if the Tories won every election until the 30s, Rishi won't be Prime Minister then. And I felt there's a kind of bathos to it. And I suppose in the end, the decision on HS2, there's now going to be a high-speed rail line between London and Birmingham, because it's been extended to Euston. There was a talk of it not coming to Euston.
And he made that clear today, under a new management company, because he was unhappy with the way it had been managed.
What it actually means is it enlarges Greater London to include Birmingham. So now the Birmingham property market is going to be within 50 minutes, 55 minutes of central London.
Fair point.
Which actually means Birmingham is now part of London. And so it's actually, you're going to create a bigger London. Greater London's not just this greater south east.
John, I've always criticised
that. In terms of inequality, that's going to be quite...
I've always criticised...
the opposite of what they claim.
I've always criticised this. As I said, I cited the French example earlier. It just drives more business to London, not Birmingham or Manchester. I've never believed any of that. However, his plan to link up all those northern cities, and they all got to mention the new station in Bradford, Hull got to mention, the Manchester-Liverpool 12 billion investment. But Labour have come back and said that many of the new railway lines he's talking about and the electrifications had already been promised.
So what today was a bunch of re-announcements, some slight reinstatements, because remember when they took the Leeds leg off HS2, they also cancelled Bradford, the station. They cancelled quite a lot of what was then called Northern Powerhouse Rail.
Yes.
So there's a new brand for re-announcing existing promises which haven't actually been through more than, here's the costing estimate. They've not got what would the work take, they've not built in the inflation, they don't know that the 12 billion for Manchester to Liverpool will actually be able to fund that. If it has the same cost overruns, because they've said actually, haven't they, costs have increased on HS2.
This is my worry, yeah. Will all these new projects finish up the same?
And I saw an estimate from the FT correspondent, Jen Williams, that a large chunk, she said up to a third, of the money is going to be spent on potholes. Now, potholes are important, But there's potholes in roads because of 13 years of underfunding of local council. To switch money from rail to that, it feels like there's a lot of spin in the representation, and I suspect it will fall apart over time.
The idea of linking up the northern cities is a very good idea.
Very good idea.
Fine. Okay, so we agree on that.
Yeah.
So the Labour response to it has been, well, they've been critical, but what would Labour do about HS2?
So the first thing is, Labour wouldn't have built such a gold-plated railway. 10 billion of the costs are actually probably thanks to your campaigning. The campaigning in the Chilterns
Oh, thank you.
led to
Well, it's now the largest
tunneling.
underground railway in the world.
Yeah. And the irony is, of course, this was done to placate Tory voters who are probably going to vote Lib Dem in the next election. So that £10 billion to not even save the seats you want to save is remarkably bad political spending. But I think Labour's position is we now have a massive problem with infrastructure, whether it's rail infrastructure, delivering the northern connections, or the new power connections, or the offshore cables and interconnectors. Such a massive need for them. Something's going wrong in infrastructure development planning, something's going wrong in slowing down the planning permissions, something's going wrong in the design and delivery. So there's going to be Labour will have a review. We can't do anything about it in opposition. We have to be ready coming to government to do
I think it's pretty tough for everybody. What about the advanced British standard, which is, as I said, the sort of updated school cert? The idea that we do five subjects up to 18, so we get a broader qualification, a bit more like a sort of baccalaureate type qualification. Good idea?
Well, I mean, you know me, I'm a Remainer. Closer to Europe we can get.
Oh, they never give up.
We're taking European qualifications.
They never
taking European timescale for getting rid of fossil fuel cars. I mean, that's something funny about it. I thought it was very funny. The Prime Minister's great reform is, let's be more like France.
Well, the French did get some things right.
I don't myself.
He was also going to give incentives for teachers, wasn't he?
Yes, he was, and of course
that's not a bad idea because we do need good people in teaching.
Exactly, and that was the criticism of some of his earlier announcements about school reform, as the teachers were saying, well, you're asking us to do extra work, but you're not paying us any more, and so that was obviously a very good thing. But it's just, I mean, I come back to it. I don't get any sense that the voters of Britain were saying, oh, if only we just had more maths. Everything, do you know what I mean?
Everything better with more maths.
Yeah, I mean, obviously.
I tell you what, just go and play darts. Your mental arithmetic would improve pretty quickly there.
Or snooker, very good for mental arithmetic. Okay, fine. It's all very kind of worthy stuff. But, he'd set a challenge to the Labour Party, which would be interesting to see how they respond next week, because the criticism that Keir Starmer is kind of basically trying to avoid saying anything while he's busy measuring the curtains for Downing Street is a fair one, and it's something that resonates with voters, because voters say they definitely don't like the Tories, fair enough, but they also say we don't quite know what to make of this Keir Starmer bloke yet, we don't really know what he stands for, we're not really sure what Labour would do in office. So Labour have a choice next week. They can continue their strategy of basically not saying anything, apart from sort of general platitudes about spending more, which is fine. Or they can kind of outline what they would actually do, not in any great detail, because you wouldn't as an opposition at this point, but to give people if Labour are the change, then I would like to know what's a Labour change.
He's made it easy for Labour on one thing. He didn't mention legal net migration at all.
No.
We're going to get the figures in a couple of weeks showing over 1 million in the last 2 years. And as for Stop the Boats, I mean, no mention of ECHR. This could have been a real wedge issue with Labour.
I think a few things. One is, I think it's interesting that the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom and of Great Britain and Northern Ireland believes his major speech should be about posing a problem to the Labour Party. He talked about Keir and the Labour Party so often, you thought, don't you care about Britain? Do you not have a view about Britain's future? So that was interesting to me. But I don't think he listened to what you said during the referendum campaign. He didn't listen to the campaign at all. Take back control. It wasn't stop the boats. Nobody can ever stop 100% of something. What you have to do is have control. And I think the chances of Labour meeting, I mean, that's why Keir went to Europe, speak to Macron, speak to Europol. Somebody who actually can do a deal with Europe is somebody who actually can take control.
And it could be even higher numbers.
And the contest over control is one that Labour can at least take to a score draw, because I think Rishi made a mistake by saying he could stop it. You can never stop.
Well, Tony Abbott in Australia did. Final
He had
thought.
an ocean, didn't he? He had an ocean.
Well, he did, and we've got a channel, you know. And final thought, Alex. I was in Manchester. There were swarms of young people there. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
The sheer number of young people that were there, hungry for ideas, wanting to believe in something.
Yeah.
Did today do it?
For those people, I'm not sure they've found what they're looking for quite yet.
Okay, gentlemen,
Thank you.
thank you very much indeed. Somehow, he did his best. It hasn't really worked.